So you might be wondering, what in the world does ice have to do with those sweet greens? Well, it all goes back to a 1932 Supreme Court case where an Oklahoma ice company, the New State Ice Company, sued a private ice vendor for selling ice without a license. And though he wrote the dissenting opinion on this case, Judge Louis Brandeis coined the term Laboratories of Democracy when he said, "A state may, if its citizens choose, serve as a laboratory and try novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country." Basically saying yes, though it might sound ridiculous, the state of Oklahoma does have the power to regulate ice and require a license to sell it. That's a job delegated to the state, not federal government.
Many leaders on many levels.
This is because the 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights states that the powers not delegated to the United States in the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. This brings us to states' rights and what they're allowed to experiment with as laboratories. Basically allowing things like marijuana, since it's not specifically prohibited in the Constitution. Gun laws, traffic laws, and motorcycle helmet laws are also things the state is responsible for. Part of the purpose of this system, however, is that the federal government can, if it wants to, adopt these as federal laws if they've shown to be effective in their states. A good example of this is
the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare.
Originally a Massachusetts healthcare reform law that President Obama enacted into federal law in 2010, as well as gay marriage voted in 2015, and of course,
In the drinking age, nearly every state that has raised the drinking age to 21 has produced a significant drop in the teenage driving fatalities.
a perfect example of this system, as federal law was enacted, following the proven success of all the states who had already raised the drinking age. Finally, in another Supreme Court case in 1935, Justice Brandeis was finally heard when a poultry company sued the United States for regulating too harshly and overstepping their boundaries, using the Commerce Clause as usual to back them up. The cause of this was the United States charging Schechter with more than 10 charges, specifically about straight killing, which was basically the way a customer would select a chicken. So in response to this and other aspects of FDR's New Deal, the plan to recover from the Great Depression in the 30s,
but there were a lot of people who actually got worried about Roosevelt having too much power. And this was a time of dictatorships all over the world, and a lot of democracies had given way to dictatorship because of the stresses of the economy and the Depression.
Brandeis said, "This is the end of this business of centralization, and I want you to go back and tell the president that we're not going to let this government centralize everything." Standing up for the 10th Amendment as well as states' rights, but this time being in the majority. But beyond the fuss over an ice license and this silly chicken business, what does this actually mean? The reason we should all understand the 10th Amendment is to prevent the government from overstepping their rightful sphere of influence, specified by the Constitution, and violating the states' rights by regulating things that they simply don't have the authority to regulate, like the choosing of chickens.
Don't make the mistake of thinking any one level is better than any other.
Now, like every other issue, there is the opposite side of this topic, the misuse of the 10th Amendment. In 1963, when confronted for blocking out 2 African American students from the University of Alabama, Governor George Wallace brought to his assistance the 10th Amendment to justify his actions, trying to say we as a state have the right to institute segregation. Well, Governor Wallace, you would have been right if it had been 95 years earlier. Because after the Civil War, in 1868, the 14th Amendment was adopted. And while the 14th Amendment touched on a lot of topics, the part that best applies to this case is Section 1, that basically ensures all citizens equal protection under the law. But it only took the National Guard being sent to the school to tell him this for Governor Wallace to give up, and finally open the school's doors. Thanks, JFK. Though technically you are overstepping your boundaries by federalizing the National Guard, a power delegated to states. 10th Amendment, the powers not delegated to the United States, by states respectively to the people. Often overlooked in the Bill of Rights and in the shadow of gun rights and freedom of speech,
outrageous hypocrisy.
The 10th Amendment is important to me because we cannot forget the principles on which our nation was formed, like equal representation in a non-oppressive central government. Finally, a current topic relating to this exactly. On the 4th of January, Attorney General Jeff Sessions ordered the Department of Justice to crack down on marijuana laws, even in states where it's legalized, including California, as of the 1st of January this year.
Jeff Sessions.
Marijuana companies have been on a roller coaster ride since the start of 2018 after Attorney General
Sessions told me that marijuana simply wasn't going to be on President Trump's agenda.
The policy change actually goes against what Jeff Sessions promised elected officials in this body before his confirmation.
So before his confirmation as Attorney General, Jeff Sessions was known for being a states' rights guy, and though he was well known for opposing marijuana
and trying to send that message with clarity that good people don't smoke marijuana.
he had previously said that under Trump's administration, marijuana was the least of their concerns, and that
States' rights would be protected.
However, with this news coming so soon after the legalization of recreational marijuana in California, the extent of the repercussions is still unknown.
He said he would. It's a states' rights issue.
So we will just have to wait and see to what extent they carry it out and how it might affect the economy, since the industry was predicted to produce over $1 billion in tax revenue by the year 2020 since legalization in California.
I just hope that we can get our thoughts together on it.
Me too, Jeff Sessions.